am so excited today to be talking to Daniel Lavery, who wrote the incredible book, Something That May Shock and Discredit You. And the name on the book is Daniel Mallory Ortberg. And I am so excited to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you so much for having me. It was great to, walk from my bedroom to my living room to join you here.
The book is so incredible in terms of its form and structure, and it's so unique. And also the range of references your brain is able to relate to and empathize with. And so I'm so curious about how you arrived at that structure and form.
When I thought about what it would mean to write a collection of essays that dealt with not just transition, but I think more specifically the sort of 18 months in my own life where I was trying really hard not to transition, and thinking about what were all the ways that I attempted to figure out, how do I trust my own thoughts and feelings? What can I compare it to that I'm already familiar with? That to me felt like a really interesting and worthwhile project. Was just very specific time in my life. How did I contextualize myself in everything that I was already familiar with, and how did that change?
Yeah, no, it's really powerful, and it's really unexpected, I think, to have so much of your doubt front and center, and and really empowering, I think, probably to a lot of people. And I love there's something that you wrote about how you feel 12 and 40 at the same time, which I think so many of us can relate to.
Yeah.
What is it that we feel like we should be certain about our intentions and our desires when we're 40? Like, why do you feel like we're so uncomfortable with that?
Oh man, I think certainly some of it has to do with, at least for me, a difficulty distinguishing between certainty and readiness. I'll often think, I'm not ready to make a decision unless I know 100% that I'll never feel bad about it. Everything will work out. No other option is anywhere near as good. That's what being ready means. As opposed to, I think, the kind of readiness of, I've given this a lot of thought. I'm prepared to accept a number of outcomes, some of which I may not be able to control. I'll never be able to know what would happen if I didn't do this, because the problem with taking action is that you foreclose the fantasy that you can just endlessly imagine something and never do anything. And letting go of that is often harder for me than I realize it's going to be, because there's a part of me that thinks what I would like to do is nothing, and then just imagine things for 70 years, and then do it, like step out of a cave and do it, and the time will not have passed for anyone. Like, it will just have been 70 years of contemplation. And turns out you can't do that.
No, I love that, because I feel like anyone can empathize with that, even if it's not the particular shared fantasy. Like, if it's, everyone has that that thing that because we're all given these imaginations, of course. And I'm also interested in, you talk about, you refer to being female sometimes as like a job, almost like you use the metaphor kind of that. And why was that, like, you use kind of several metaphors of like what womanhood or femaleness is, and like what was important for you to represent in those?
Yeah, I think one of the things that felt really important to me to spend some time thinking about was, I was very surprised when I first started thinking I might want to transition. You could have knocked me over with a feather. I was like, didn't see this one coming. And there were some ways in which, as I reflected on various moments throughout my life, that I thought, oh, is that what part of that might have been? Could that have been part of what I was feeling? And I think part of what I had done to not think about it for such a long time was the sort of assumption of, well, everybody feels bad about their body, and we all know that if you feel bad about your body, that's because that's just what it's like to be a woman. And so if I feel bad about my body, it's proof that I'm not trans. Mm-hmm. And so this sort of like way to attempt to convince myself that I couldn't be something, and what it felt like to stop thinking about it in terms of proof in one way or the other, and more in the sense of what kind of world would it look like if I accepted things like physical autonomy is a good thing, or that the goals of feminism aren't necessarily make sure everybody's a woman or as many people as possible are women, but what does freedom look like for us? And that was a really useful switch for me when I stopped thinking of this as like, you know, this is something I'm doing or thinking about doing that would hurt other people, or that I would need to feel bad about, or that I would need to sort of answer for.
I loved most the thing you quote a friend of yours who says that, like, you'll say it better, but we're given wheat, God gives us wheat, not bread. Maybe you can talk about that. I thought that was just like one of the most gorgeous things I've ever read.
I felt the same way. That was my friend Julian K. Jarbo, and they are a writer that I adore. And I will also mangle the quotes slightly, but they had talked about, you know, their understanding of, I think part of the reason that my transness feels deeply connected to my spirituality is in the same way that, you know, humans get to transform wheat into bread and grapes into wine. So too do I get to engage in the spiritual work of transformation. That's not word for word, Julian, I hope you don't mind. But as soon as they told that to me, I was like, I'm going to put that in the book. I'm going to quote you, but it's happening. It's done. I hope you're okay with that.
No, it's gorgeous. It's like, yes, we're engaged. Of course, we're engaged in the act of our own creation and of creating and transforming the world and ourselves. And that is part of our work. I was also really interested. I mean, I don't want to spoil sort of the ending, but I feel like for a book that engages so much in uncertainty and doubt, there seemed almost like a very clear sense of priority and intention and like what we're here for as humans, like what our meaning on earth is, like in your last chapter. And I was sort of wondering why you wanted to end that way.
Vocation and discernment are really important themes that come up a lot, again, in the First and Second Testaments, and a sense of what one might be offered in an encounter with the divine is not going to be certainty, but it is going to be vocation, and they will have an opportunity to either affirm it or reject it. And I think specifically of the story of Jonah and the vine outside of Nineveh and his various attempts to avoid a vocation, which in the story itself is kind of great because it's both, there's a sort of playfulness of like, sure, you can avoid this. You don't have to say yes. I'm sending a whale after you, but that's fine. And yeah, just that kind of playfulness and that kind of tension. And then what does it look like to avoid a vocation, and what does it look like to affirm it? And yeah, I think the book felt right to end with, there's still doubt here, but I'm ready to affirm a vocation. Let's give it a go. Let's fuck shit up.